This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Annie Coleman in St. Louis, Missouri, in February 2006. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Chapter 14. By and by, when we got up, we turned over the truck the gang had stole off of the wreck, and found boots and blankets and clothes, and all sorts of other things, and a lot of books, and a spyglass, and 3 boxes of cigars. We had never been this rich before in neither of our lives. The cigars was prime. We laid off all the afternoon in the woods talking, and me reading the books, and having a general good time. I told Jim all about what happened inside the wreck and at the ferry boat, and I said these kinds of things was adventures, but he said he didn't want no more adventures. He said that when I went in the Texas and he crawled back to get on the raft and found her gone, he nearly died, because he judged it was all up for him any way it could be fixed. For if he didn't get saved, he would get drownded, and if he did get saved, whoever saved him would send him back home so as to get the reward, and then Miss Watson would sell him South Shore. Well, he was right. He was most always right. He had an uncommon level head for a nigger. I read considerable to Jim about kings and dukes and earls and such, and how gaudy they dressed, and how much style they put on, and called each other your majesty, and your grace, and your lordship, and so on, 'stead of mister, and Jim's eyes bugged out, and he was interested. He says, "I didn't know they was so many on 'em. I hain't heard 'bout none on 'em, scasely, but old King Sollerman, unless you counts dem kings that's in a pack of kyards. How much do a king get?" "Get?" I says. "Why, they get $1,000 a month if they want it. They can have just as much as they want. Everything belongs to them." "Ain't that gay? And what they got to do, Huck?" "They don't do nothing. Why, how you talk. They just set around." "No, is that so?" "O' course it is. They just set around, except maybe when there's a war, then they go to the war. But other times they just lazy around, or go hawking, just hawking and Shh! Do you hear a noise?" We skipped out and looked, but it warn't nothing but the flutter of a steamboat's wheel away down, comin' round the point. So we come back. "Yes," says I, "and other times, when things is dull, they fuss with the Parlymint, and if everybody don't go just so, he whacks their heads off. But mostly they hang round the harem." "Round a which?" "Harem." "What's de harem?" "The place where he keeps his wives. Don't you know about the harem? Solomon had one. He had about 1,000,000 wives." "Why, yes, that's so. I done forgot it. A harem's a boarding house, I reckon. Most likely they has rackety times in de nursery. I reckon de wives quarrels considerable, and dat creased de racket. Yet dey say Solomon de wisest man dat ever live. I don't take no stock in dat. Becase, why? Would a wise man want to live in de midst of such a blim-blammin' all de time? No, 'deed he wouldn't. A wise man'd take and build a biler factory, and den he could shet down de biler factory when he want to rest." "Well, but he was the wisest man anyway, because the widow she told me so her own self." "I don't keer what de widow say. He warn't no wise man nuther. He had some of de dad-fetchedest ways I ever see. Does you know 'bout dat child dat he is gwine to chop in two?" "Yes, the widow told me all about it." "Well, den, warn't dat de beatin'est notion in de world? You just take and look at it a minute. Dat's de stump dere. Dat's one of de women. Here's you. Dat's de other one. I's Sollerman, and dish yer dollar bill's de chile. Bofen you claims it. What does I do? Does I shin around amongst de neighbors and find out which un you de bill do belong to, and hand it over to de right one all safe and sound, de way dat anybody dat had any gumption would? No, I take and whack de bill in two, and give half on it to you, and de other half to the other woman. Dat's de way Solomon was gwine to do wid de chile. Now I want to ast you, what's the use of dat $5. Can't buy nothing wid it. And what use is half a chile? I wouldn't give a dern for $1,000,000 in 'em. But hang it, Jim, you've clean missed the point. Blame it, you've missed it 1,000 mile. Who, me? Go 'long. Don't talk to me 'bout your points. I reckon I know sense when I sees it, and dey ain't no sense in such doin's as dat. Dispute warn't 'bout half a child, dispute was about a whole child, and de man that think he can settle a dispute 'bout a whole child wid a half a child don't know enough to come in out in de rain. Don't talk to me 'bout Sollerman, Huck. I knows him by de back. But I tell you, you don't get the point. Blame de point. I reckon I knows what I knows, and mind you, de real point is down furder. It's down deeper. It lays in de way Solomon was raised. You take a man that's got only 1 or 2 chillen. Is dat man gwine to be wasteful of chillen? No, he ain't. He can't afford it. He know how to value 'em. But you take a man that's got about 5,000,000 chillen running around house, and it's different. He as soon chop a child in 2 as a cat. Dey's plenty more. A child or 2, more or less, warn't no consequence to Sollerman, dad fetch 'em. I never see such a nigger. If he got a notion in his head once, there warn't no getting it out again. He was the most down on Solomon of any nigger I ever see. So I went to talking about other kings, and let Solomon slide. I told about Louis XVI, that got his head cut off in France long time ago, and about his little boy the Dolphin, that would have been a king, but they took and shut him up in jail, and some say he died there. Po' little chap. But some says he got out and got away and come to America. That's good, but he'll be pooty lonesome. Dey ain't no kings here, is dey, Huck? No. Then he can't get no situation. What he gwine to do? Well, I don't know. Some of them gets on the police, and some of them learns people how to talk French. Why, Huck, don't the French people talk the same way we does? No, Jim, you couldn't understand a word they said. Not a single word. Well, now, I be ding busted. How did dat come? I don't know, but it's so. I got some of their jabber out of a book. Suppose a man was to come to you and say, "Parlez-vous Francie?" What would you think? I wouldn't think nothing. I'd take and bust him over the head, dat is, if he warn't white. I wouldn't allow no nigger to call me dat. Shucks, it ain't calling you anything. It's only saying, "Do you know how to talk French?" Well, then, why couldn't he say it? Why, he is a-sayin' it. That's a Frenchman's way of sayin' it. Well, it's a blame ridiculous way, and I don't want to hear no more 'bout it. Dey ain't no sense in it. Look here, Jim. Does a cat talk like we do? No, a cat don't. Well, does a cow? No, a cow don't nuther. Does a cat talk like a cow, or a cow talk like a cat? No, they don't. It's natural and right for 'em to talk different from each other, ain't it? Course. And ain't it natural and right for a cat and a cow to talk different from us? Why, most surely it is. Well, then, why ain't it natural and right for a Frenchman to talk different from us? You answer me that. Is a cat a man, Huck? No. Well, then, there ain't no sense in a cat talking like a man. Is a cow a man, or is a cow a cat? No, she ain't either of them. Well, then, she ain't got no business to talk like either one or the other of 'em. Is a Frenchman a man? Yes. Well, then, dad blame it, why don't he talk like a man? You answer me dat. I see it warn't no use wasting words. You can't learn a nigger to argue. So I quit. End of chapter 14.